Hello again, my little chapter serfs, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, I will be sharing with you my fun and fluffy, pure Firstborn Blood Ravens army. And you know what? I took this thing to a casual tournament, and it was a ton of fun to use. It just felt so right. From the tactical marines to the terminators, this army just worked. And I'm really excited to go through it with you today. So without further ado, let's mount up, roll out, and drive right into this thing.
Attention guardsmen, the commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
Now, before we get into the list itself, I just want to say that I have done a tournament after action report running this army. It's in a separate video, and I'll make sure there's a link to it down in the description below. So if you want to see how this list did in action, then make sure to check it out. But now let's get into the list. And as per usual, I want to start off with a little bit of context, setting up why I chose to take this particular kind of army. And it's kind of a strange story because there are some real life reasons why I wanted to run this list. Firstly, the tournament that I was going to is actually a memorial event for a good friend of mine who passed away a couple of years ago, Stu. Stu was a really big part of the local wargaming community and was pretty well known in the competitive 40k circles in the UK. And he was actually the co-founder of the Northern Warlords Club. And its other co-founder, Matt, in honor of his memory, has been running annual tournaments just so we could all get together. And they're more of a social event than anything else. And the idea is you turn up with some fun lists, we have a few drinks, we toast the memory of Stu, and we have a bit of fun. Now, Stu's favourite army was Space Marines. And last year when we ran this event, which was the first time last year, I didn't have a Space Marine army that I could take to the event. I had my Black Templars, but they weren't really, well, they needed a bit of work doing to them, shall we say. So I ended up running my Imperial Guard based off the 3rd edition Codex example army, which was really fun, but I wanted this time to do it properly. So I ended up getting this army, and I basically bought it pre-painted in one go off eBay. And here is where I actually have to say a big thank you to the Mordian Glory community, because I was doing a live stream and I was talking about how the Stu event was coming up, and I was browsing eBay. You guys know me. I'm always browsing eBay looking for good Warhammer deals, and I noticed this army and I said to chat, hey, should I get this and run it at the Stu event? And chat immediately said yes, and not only that, they funded the entire thing. So a big shout out to the Mordian Glory livestream community, because it's thanks to those guys that I have this army and that I was able to do the event properly this time. Now, some of you might be wondering, that's all well and good, Mordian, but why did you end up going with pure Firstborn? Well, there were two reasons. Firstly, Stu was an old boy. He had been playing 40k since I think it came out. He had a load of metal Space Marine models, and he also had an Eldar army, and he had loads of the original old Eldar models as well. I'm talking the Guardians with the mesh armor. I think all of his aspect warriors were in metal, and he even had the old metal fire prisms. You know, the ones that the gun always broke off and always fell to the side. So I wanted to run a more old school Space Marine army in recognition of, Stu's length of service in the hobby. But there was another reason as well. I really like Firstborn. I have been playing Warhammer 40k since 3rd edition. In fact, some of my oldest memories growing up as a kid was actually playing Warhammer 40k with the old 2nd edition Space Orcs fighting against my brother's Blood Angels. And whilst I know Primaris have been around a long time now, coming up to a decade, I know that a lot of people do enjoy playing their Primaris, and if you enjoy playing them, then that's great. This video isn't an anti-Primaris bashing video or anything like that. I've always just preferred the Firstborn. I've never quite gelled with the Primaris, even with some of the beautiful models that they come out with, like the Space Wolves and some of the new Black Templar stuff. I don't know what it is, I just love the good old Firstborn. And for a little while now, I've wanted to run a pure Firstborn army just to show that the old timers have still got what it takes. Even if they're not necessarily the most competitive army, they're still an army you can absolutely have fun with. And I also wanted to show that they're an army that feels right on the tabletop. Sometimes we're so obsessed with competitive play and all that kind of stuff that we forget that armies should pass the vibe check. And so when I was putting this army together, because this is a segment of the Full Blood Raven Force that I actually got off eBay, when I was putting this army together, I thought, I want to run what in my mind's eye feels like the most quintessential classic Space Marine army. Something that you could see in the pages of an old white dwarf. I wanted to run Tactical Marines, combat squadded down. I wanted to run Razorbacks. When was the last time you saw anyone running a Razorback? I wanted to run things like Assault Marines, and I didn't want to like overly skew in any one direction. I'd take one squad of each, except for in the battle line or traditional troop choice section, where I'd take a little bit more than that. And a big part of this thought process when I was building this list was actually basing it off what my brother used to use when he played 40k, and he always used to run an army very similar to this, albeit with a bit more Death Company because he was a Blood Angels player. And so I kind of channeled nearly 30 years of Warhammer experience playing against Firstborn armies, and this is what I came up with. But what exactly is in this army? Well, I think I have blue-balled you long enough, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty detail. Let's get into the units. And even though this is a Space Marine army, I am an Imperial Guard player at heart, and so of course we must start with the Infantry Corps. Because every day in the Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal a banquet, every paycheck a fortune, every formation a parade. I love the Corps. The foundation of this army is 3 tactical squads, broken down into 6 combat squads, with a couple of those being mounted up in the Razorbacks. Now, I wanted to go with Tactical Marines because, of course, they're Firstborn, but also I really like the way they can combat squad down. Being able to get a squad of 5 Marines for the equivalent of 70 points is really nice. When I look over at my Imperial Guard squads and I'm paying 65 points, basically the same cost, for a bunch of bozos which are, I wouldn't even say half as capable as 5 Marines, I'm getting a bit jealous. I think Tactical Marines are actually really good. Even though this is a more fun and fluffy army, I would genuinely take Tactical Marines into the competitive meta. Why would you ever take Intercessors? What, for sticky objectives? Do you know how many times I've seen someone take Intercessors for sticky objectives and then leave them sat on the home objective anyway because someone's got some kind of reserves or deep strikers? Might as well save yourself like, what, 10 points and get yourself, because you're going to take 2 Intercessor squads, actually be saving 20 points. Might as well save yourself 20 points and end up with a bunch of special weapons is what I say. So how did I break these tactical squads down? What did I do with the different combat squads? Well, I originally thought about taking them all in this configuration, where I've got all the special weapons and heavy weapons in one and then just bolters in the other. But I realized that I actually wanted to sort of spread the love around a little bit, and I wanted most of these combat squads to actually be able to do something. I want them all to have a little bit of punch. If I've got all the special weapons in one half and then all bolters in the other half across the entire spread, then you're going to end up with 3 squads which can do something and then 3 squads which are going to be little more than cannon fodder. So what I ended up doing is going for one of the tacticals that wasn't in a transport. I did put the special weapons and the heavy weapon and the sergeant in one half of it. And then I did have one squad of basic bolter bitches. The idea is that the basic bolter bitches would just sit on the home objective, so they didn't really need like a special weapon. So I might as well have a bit of extra firepower in here. But everybody else was going to be pushing into the mid board. So what I did is I went for the Razorbacks and I put the combat squads with a special weapon and the sergeant in them, and then for the foot slogging squads I went for the heavy bolters because I knew I was going to be playing on GW terrain, so I figured that there's a chance that sometimes these guys will get to stay still and they'll be able to use heavy bolter, and if they're pushing forward, well, they're still Marines, they're hitting them forward, so that'll be fine. And I have to say, this absolutely worked like a charm. There were plenty of times when just having a cheeky heavy bolter in this squad, or in these two squads I should say, meant that they were able to actually chip a bit of damage off here. Oh look, there's a little 2 damage wound gone through. That's a vehicle with its last wound taken off, or that's another enemy model destroyed. It was actually really useful just having the heavy weapons in here. And then the Razorback squads would drive forward, jump out, and start conquering and purging. And speaking of the Razorbacks, oh my god, like, I am totally converted to these guys. You get out of a transport and you get full rerolls to wound, but you're not doing it with shitty guardsmen, you're doing it with goddamn Space Marines. Benefit of hindsight, I do wonder if it would have been better to put the heavy weapons in here to maximize the effectiveness of the Razorback's ability, but truth be told, I didn't really notice a big difference with the extra rerolls on the combat squad. It was just a nice little boost, but it definitely, when I remembered the ability, I was like, wow, that's actually quite nice. So yeah, maybe you should go all the heavy weapons and special weapons in here to take advantage of this, but it didn't make a huge difference in game. Speaking of not making a huge difference in game, why did I go for heavy bolters over something like las cannons? I mean, las cannons are so obviously the better choice. Well, I went for the heavy bolters because they're the models that I had, and truth be told, I absolutely love this belt-fed heavy bolter style. It reminds me of, is it Dawn of War 1, where you've got like the intro with the heavy bolter guy, and also Dawn of War 2 with the guys like trying to shoot the warp spider. Yeah, love this style of heavy bolter. I also played it completely strictly WYSIWYG on these tactical squads as well. So the sergeants, even though they could have had plasma pistol and power fist, I went for bolt pistol and chainsword because that's what they are armed with. Now, that was just because I wanted to run what felt like very quintessential tactical squads. But if you were to take this into a more competitive environment, I would say, look, just go for the plasma pistol and power fist. It's no biggie. But I wanted to embrace the tenets of Stillmania. I wanted to embrace pure WYSIWYG. And you know what? I really didn't notice a big difference. There was 1 or 2 times when I was like, oh, it would have been great to have a power fist there. But again, it kind of reminds me, sometimes we obsess in 40k about having the best loadout and the best, and everything must be absolutely optimized. And sometimes, is it really going to make a big difference if you have a better weapon on a tactical squad sergeant? Probably not. So it was cool to just be there with the chainswords, and it was actually not particularly debilitating. But to be fair, this wasn't all just Stillmania and nostalgia. I did actually have a good tactical reason for putting these units into my list. And that was, I wanted good objective control, because each one of these squads is actually 10 OC, which typically is enough to take an objective with everyone so obsessed with elite armies these days. And also, it gives me lots of ship munchers. This is 6 squads of ship munchers right here. Good for screening, good for doing objectives, good for just harassing, good for just being a pain in the ass. And if I've got a shitty job that needs doing, I would much rather send out a 70-point tactical combat squad to do it than to send out a 300-point Terminator squad. It's kind of funny, I built this army just to lean into the sort of White Dwarf nostalgia vibes, but after I was done putting it together, I kind of realized that it does have a good solid foundation. And I think, not to go off topic too much, but I think a lot of people obsess with taking maximum damage dealers in their armies these days, and they don't realize that they're actually ironically being less efficient, because if you take a 300-point mega death unit and then you draw an objective like cleanse, and then you've got no small unit to go and do that objective, your 300-point death machine ends up just pushing a button. And having enough ship munchers, I think, is the key to having a strong army. But we've talked a lot about the infantry corps now, we've talked a lot about ship munchers, but we do have some elite damage dealers in this army. And this is very much the second part of the force. Once again, the guiding principle for this was, would it look right in a White Dwarf battle report of old, and is it Firstborn? The first unit I went for were the Vanguard Veterans. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was wanting to take Assault Marines, but Assault Marines have gone to Legends. big F in the chat. And so I ended up going with Vanguard Veterans as a close facsimile. Now I gave each one of my guys a plasma pistol because I had those models. And then they just had the very boringly named Vanguard close combat weapons. Now I put these guys in the list because I literally was just thinking Assault Marines. But I actually ended up really liking them. They're pretty spicy in combat. And they're no slouches at shooting either with 5 plasma shots. And they're dirt cheap. They're like 95 points. And they're fast. Really, really like Vanguard Veterans and was surprised at how effective they were. But sometimes you just need some big chunky boys because they've only got power armor on these Vanguard. And so we went for 2 units of Terminators. 1 assault and 1 tactical. Tactical Terminators had an assault cannon and the sergeant had a power sword because that is what looks cool. They had no leaders with them whatsoever, and the tactical Terminators went in deep strike every single time because that's what tactical Terminators do. They deep strike down. That's what's cool about them. Also, quite nice having a little bit of a reserve. I actually never really use these guys in an aggressive manner. I always use them quite defensively, like, ooh, I need a little bit of support over here. Deep strike the Terminators down. And they were really good at being a firefighting unit. And yeah, that's how I think I would use them again. I think a lot of people just spaff the Terminators off into a far corner and then they die. But I think they're much better and actually quite effective if you use them as someone who can run damage control. As with the Assault Terminators, they were led by the one and only character in my army, my Terminator Captain, and he had a Stormbolter and a Relic Blade, and because I had 10 points left over, I did give him an enhancement. He had the enhancement from Ironstorm, which is the 4+ Feel No Pain. Now, he was leading a unit of Assault Terminators, all with Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, because of course they were, because that looks so cool. And also it's quite punchy. And then of course they went in a Land Raider, because back in the day, you always saw Assault Terminators in a Land Raider. Now, I wish I had a regular Land Raider, because that would have been perfect. But unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but I do actually prefer the Land Raider Crusader model. But that, unfortunately, I did have a Land Raider Crusader. Now, I really like the Land Raider Crusader. It actually did a really good job. I have no complaints about it whatsoever. It was fantastic with Oath of Moment, especially with Super Oath. We're going to cover the detachment and everything at the end, don't worry. But just for the sake of the pure nostalgia, I think I would have preferred to have a classic Land Raider instead. But hey, you know what? A Landy's a Landy. Got one of them, stuck a bunch of Assault Terminators in it, had a great time. Regarding the Terminator Captain with the Assault Terminators, it was fine. I didn't really need his reroll ability, but they hit on 4s with the Thunderhammers a lot of the time. And so him hitting on like 2s was great because often they would miss and he would help pick up the slack. I know maybe in theory it would be better to have these guys deep striking down so they could take advantage of his reroll. But the funny thing is that a 9-inch rerollable charge, I've seen that fail so many times. Maybe it's the guard player in me and I'm used to deep striking shooting units like Scions, but for me, it just felt so much more effective just having the assault unit in the assault transport rather than fishing for some bullshit random charge that I won't get. And then these guys didn't really need to worry about charging out of deep strike because they mostly just shot when they came down. So even though online logic would tell you take this guy, put him in here, have them deep strike, put these guys in the transport. No, actually, in my opinion, it's much better to have the deep striking guys not have to rely on charges to be effective. And last but not least, Devastators! Because you've got to have Devastators, because at this point, we've got Tacticals, we've got Assaults, we've got Termies, and we have Devastators. Only thing we are missing is Scouts, but don't worry, that will be rectified in the future. Watch this space. But we have a Devastator squads here, and what are they equipped with? Well, the most mixed loadout, because this is what the squad came with. We've got a las cannon, a multi-melter, and 2 plasma cannons. Literally, it would have been far better to have 4 las cannons, but this is what they came with. I was obeying the tenets of Stillmania, and back in the day, in White Dwarf, they always used to give their Devastator squads mixed loadouts because the logic was they could handle any scenario that they came across. Now that is a very flawed logic, because actually what it means is they can't handle anything that they come across because they've not got enough of the relevant weapons. But you know what? The Devies were alright. They were alright. They did a bit of damage here and there. As crazy as it sounds, I've got a spare missile launcher model. I am thinking of swapping out the multi-melter for a missile launcher because it often just wasn't in range. And I might use that multi-melter in like another squad somewhere. But yeah, it was actually, the Devastators were fine. And yeah, I did give the Sergeant Plasma Pistol and Power Fist because even though that model will be so much better in one of these squads, but that is a Devastator Sergeant. That's what he was equipped with, and so that's what he has got. Because clearly, if he ever gets tangled up in close combat from some sort of harassing unit, then he will be able to fight his way out thanks to that Power Fist. Of course, right? But that just about covers the units, but what was the detachment that I was running? Well, it was the Ironstorm Spearhead. So I was actually Blood Angels in Ironstorm. Now, the reason I went for Blood Angels is because the models are red. No, seriously, that's why I picked Blood Angels. And then I proceeded to take 0 Blood Angels units and I went into Ironstorm instead. And I felt like that was the best way of actually representing my Blood Ravens. Because, well, they're red, so Blood Angels. And then I went for Ironstorm for 2 reasons. Firstly, narratively, I felt like the reroll to hit, the reroll to wound, the reroll damage kind of represented the Blood Ravens and all the relics that they have. If you don't know, the lore on the Blood Ravens is they go around basically gathering up relics left, right, and centre. Some people call them the Blood Magpies. And I figured that it kind of reminded me of like the Destroying Firstborn, how they've got more ornate weapons, they've got slightly better gear, and that used to be represented in their rules back in sort of like 8th and 9th edition. And I thought, well, these Blood Ravens, considering that they're all Firstborn, they've probably got access to like the chapter relics. And as we all know in 40k, if it's older, it's better. Like a plasma gun that's made these days is not as good as a plasma gun that was made in like the 30k times, right? So I figured having the Ironstorm and having those rerolls represents the slightly better equipment, the ancient relics, the treasured chapter relics that these guys will be wielding. And the other reason that I took it was because I really couldn't be bothered trying to make Gladius work. Now, I know Gladius is the better one. I know Gladius in the hands of a good Space Marine player is like so obviously the better choice. But whenever I play video games, whenever I play RPGs, and whenever I get a health potion, I never use it. I always wait until I might need it for the end. And then I get to the end and then I don't use it. And I know myself, and I know that I wouldn't use my Tactical Doctrine or my Devastator Doctrine or my Assault Doctrine because there'd be a turn when I'd be like, oh, this would be quite useful, but no, I better hold on to it. I might need it later. So, so I knew that would be my mindset. And I knew I would forget about them as well. I knew I'd get to the end of a turn and go, oh, I should have used Tactical Doctrine there. Oh, do you know what I mean? So I thought, just get rid of all that shit. Get rid of having to remember that shit. Just go for a simple couple of rerolls on each unit, and that's easy to remember. And my experience of Ironstorm is that it's really good. I found that it actually strangely paired quite well with Oath of Moment, because not only did I have Oath on a unit that I could absolutely just dogpile on top of with my whole army, but then because each unit was bringing their own set of rerolls, it was kind of like each unit had its own mini Oath. And bear in mind that the most important weapon in most squads is like the heavy weapon or the special weapon. Just having a cheeky reroll on the gun that mattered was really good. So overall, I actually think that Ironstorm is still pretty good. A lot of people loved it at the beginning of 10. Then they've sort of moved away from it, and I don't really know why. Because I used it, and it was still great, and I would still happily use it again. But there is one last thing to mention, and that is the points value. This is a 1,500 point army. I know, some of you are thinking, 1,500 points, where's the extra 500? Well, this event was actually only 1,500 points. First thing I want to say about that is I loved it. Okay, like honestly, 1,500 points is the way to go. I don't know why we went to 2,000. We used to play 1500 points back in the day. It's 1500 points now in this event, and it just felt right. You had to make decisions. You couldn't quite get everything that you wanted. If overnight, for the last 6 months of 10th, the competitive community all just decided to go to 1500 points, that would be so cool. And now that would be a big meta change. But anyway, that's not the case. And so the big question that I have for all of you is, what would you do to take this army to 2000 points? I was thinking that there are a few Firstborn units that I don't have in here right now. So for example, like I mentioned before, I don't have the scouts. If I was to go to 1500 points, I feel like I'd have to add in an extra, I'd have to add in a scout unit, right? And then probably add in a predator and a dreadnought. Now that's going to come to about 350 points roughly. So what would I spend the last 150 points on? Maybe a chaplain or something? Maybe an extra squad? I don't want to just add a bunch of armor in. I actually want to have a bit more infantry as well. So I'm kind of curious to know what you guys think that I should add to this force. But you know what? That just about covers everything. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you think of running pure Firstborn? How would you change this list? And what would you do to get it up to 2000 points? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button. It really does support the video with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to see more content like this, if you want to see, you see, I'm thinking of taking this list on a bit of a journey, this army on a bit of a journey, going from this casual 1500 point tournament to maybe a 2000 point RTT, and then a 2000 point GT, maybe even a super major. So if you want to come on this hobby journey with me and you want to see the Firstborn go to war, then make sure you subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Picklock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.